It's the Whiskey Wizard.
Hello and welcome to the Whiskey Wizard, where we say that whiskey making takes scientific knowledge, an artisan's skill and dedication, and a bit of the wizard's alchemy of light, air, earth, and fire. Wow, tonight I want to tell you all about the best time I just had this past weekend at the Wathen's Distillery. Now some of you might stop me right there and say, "Hey wizard, I think you're full of it. Wathen's doesn't own or operate a distillery." And you know what? You'd be 100% right for calling me out on that, because that's accurate. So this evening, we're going to take a look at contract distilling. Obviously, contract distilling means an entity, typically a whiskey brand, is established that does not operate a distillery, but rather contracts the mashing and distilling out to one or more distillery manufacturing operators. I guess you could say contract distilling has been around since the birth of distilling in America. In the early days, it was most often a farmer getting a distiller to make whiskey out of his excess corn when he did not own a still himself. Then, as some distillers were better than others, folks began seeking the best distillers to make their whiskey for them. Then the natural progression came, getting a distiller to make whiskey to their unique specifications. In the 1880s, S.C. Herbst did this by contracting with the Old Taylor Distillery. He wanted a pot-still distilled bourbon for his Old Fitzgerald bourbon and gave Taylor the mash bill he wanted fermented and then distilled. In the early 20th century, Julian Van Winkle signed a contract with the Stitzel Distillery to make 100 barrels of bourbon for W.L. Weller & Sons. However, it was not a bourbon made with wheat, it was the traditional bourbon made with rye. The breakup of Seagram's in the early 2000s opened up their large Lawrenceburg, Indiana distillery as a source of whiskey and contract distilling. The demand expanded rapidly for contract distilling. Then the other new distilleries saw an opportunity to make money while their whiskey was aging by contract distilling. Companies like Bardstown Bourbon Company, Castle and Key Distillery, and Kentucky Artisan Distillery went down this path. There are many brands that started off with contract distilling, but then built their own distillery in order to supply the whiskey they need. Michter's Distillery, Luxro Distillery, and Preservation Distillery are examples of this. As we discussed in the opening, the Charles Medley Distillery is another contract distiller. They contract with Heaven Hill, we think, using the Medley Wathen's mash bill, and then age their bourbon in Owensboro, Kentucky. Now, we'll talk more about blended whiskeys in the future, but High West has been contract distilling and blending from multiple sources. Another maker playing things this way as well is Angel's Envy. Angel's Envy is also a bit of a rebel newcomer that is multi-sourcing its whiskey and experimenting with double aging and barrel finishing with things like wine spirit casks, traditionally reserved for Scottish whiskies. So many brands are contract distilling. Some contract it all out, whereas others may do their own barrel aging and bottling, while still others may just do their own bottling. Of course, there are so many producers that you can rest assured that every combination exists out there somewhere. And what about the revered Pappy Van Winkle? Yes, Pappy is contract distilled by Buffalo Trace, but that will be a story for another time and a special episode of a future Whiskey Wizard episode. Here on the Whiskey Roundtable, we urge our audience to read the labels and do your own product research. Personally, I like products from single distilleries that have good folks in charge that have earned their reputations through hard work and decades of experience. Still, there are some very good and innovative contract distilled products out there. And all industries need to be open to change and innovation, so long as that innovation is leading to better products, offering the consumer a wider range of valuable taste experiences. Still, it's good for consumers to be smart, and one should continue to be a bit skeptical about sourced whiskey, especially being on the lookout to stay clear of mediocre products with big marketing fancy bottles with big price tags, and of course, with dubious stories about their origins. This is Douglas Dunbar, the Whiskey Wizard, for the Whiskey Roundtable. Cheers, Slàinte.
Hey, whiskey fans!
You can catch the Whiskey Wizard this Friday evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, live on the Whiskey Roundtable.
Grab a favorite pour and join in the fun as they inform us while tasting and evaluating a new whiskey selection on each show.
So tune in, hang out, and enjoy some laughs with the friends on this Friday's live Whiskey Roundtable YouTube videocast.
Cheers and Slàinte.